Some cases don't just haunt a city, they haunt its soul. In Baltimore, one such story begins not with a crime, but with a life full of promise. Cathy Cesnik was 26, a nun, a teacher, and an extraordinary young woman whose presence lit up classrooms and corridors alike. Born in Pittsburgh in 1942, she joined the School Sisters of Notre Dame at 18, driven by a deep devotion to faith and a passion for teaching. By the late 1960s, she had made her way to Archbishop Keough High School in Baltimore, a place where her energy, compassion, and open-minded approach would leave an indelible mark on her students. Sister Cathy was not the stereotypical strict or distant nun. She played guitar, encouraged her students' creativity, and built relationships rooted in trust and respect. She saw the girls as individuals, mentors in their own right, and often became a confidant for problems far beyond textbooks and lesson plans. She was known for her warmth, her smile, and a spark that drew people toward her. In 1969, Cathy had begun moving into a small apartment outside the convent with another young nun, Sister Helen Russell Phillips, preparing to embrace a new chapter that combined independence with her vocation. The final evening of her life was deceptively ordinary. On Friday, November 7th, 1969, Cathy left her apartment around 7 p.m., intending to cash a paycheck and purchase a gift for her newly engaged sister. It was a routine errand, nothing unusual, but she never returned. As hours turned to night, worry began to take hold. By 1 a.m., after repeated unanswered calls, her sister and fellow nuns reported her missing, alerting local authorities for the first time. What followed was a scene that would chill the city. Shortly after the disappearance was reported, Cathy's lime green Ford Maverick was spotted a short distance from her home, parked awkwardly and blocking a driveway. The car was unlocked, keys in the ignition, and the items she had purchased sat untouched on the seat. There were no signs of struggle, no indication of an intruder, only an eerie stillness that hinted something far darker than a simple disappearance. Baltimore police launched searches immediately, but in those first days, clues were scarce. Witnesses came forward with nothing concrete, and theories about a stranger abduction or sudden violence were circulating, though investigators had no evidence to confirm any scenario. The city felt the weight of fear and uncertainty as the bright, vibrant young woman who had touched so many lives vanished into the night, leaving behind only questions that would linger for decades. Sister Cathy Cesnik's story is more than a missing persons case. It is the beginning of a dark thread woven into the fabric of Baltimore, where the line between trust and betrayal, innocence and danger, would blur. Over the coming weeks, months, and decades, her disappearance would unravel a web of secrets, lies, and horrors that extended far beyond her own tragic fate. But for now, in November of 1969, all that existed was the sudden, shocking absence of a woman who had made her world brighter, and the quiet dread that she may never return. The initial hours after Sister Cathy Cesnik vanished were filled with worry, but what came next would shock Baltimore to its core. Days passed with no sign of her. Friends, colleagues, and former students combed the streets and neighborhoods, calling hospitals, checking public transportation, and leaving no stone unturned. The city was tense. A young woman, beloved and vibrant, had simply disappeared. Then on Saturday, January 3rd, 1970, nearly 2 months after Cathy's disappearance, 2 hunters ventured into a remote, snow-covered garbage dump in Lansdowne, Maryland. They stumbled upon a horrifying sight, a body partially concealed by debris and the winter landscape. It was Sister Cathy. The location itself was desolate, used for illegal dumping, and far removed from the city's populated areas. The discovery confirmed what many feared, that this was no ordinary missing persons case. The police quickly arrived on the scene, but the crime scene offered little clarity. Cathy's body showed blunt force trauma to the left temple, evidence of a violent attack. Her clothing remained largely intact, providing no clear indication of an assault. The combination of the cold, exposure, and decomposition complicated the investigation. The location, a garbage-strewn lot far from her home, suggested an effort to hide the body, though it was still partially visible. A grim message, perhaps, or a hurried disposal. The investigation immediately grew complex. Responsibility was divided between Baltimore City and Baltimore County Police, both attempting to piece together her last movements and potential suspects. In the absence of clear witnesses or physical evidence, detectives considered multiple possibilities: a random attack by a stranger, a crime of opportunity, or chillingly, a targeted killing. Her abandoned Ford Maverick near her home remained a focal point. Parked oddly, keys inside, belongings untouched, it told a story of sudden, unexpected abduction. Someone Cathy may have trusted, or someone who had observed her routines carefully. Public concern intensified as the media began covering the case. Newspapers described the young nun's disappearance and the unsettling discovery of her body, sparking fear and speculation across Baltimore. Families became wary. Students of Archbishop Keough High School were shaken, and the police faced mounting pressure to solve a mystery that seemed to deepen with each passing day. Yet, even as detectives scoured the city and the surrounding areas, the case was shrouded in questions. Who would have wanted to harm a beloved teacher and nun? Why choose such a remote and unusual disposal site? And perhaps most haunting, had Cathy discovered something that put her life in danger? The grim discovery in Lansdowne marked the beginning of a much larger story, a story that would expose secrets buried within the walls of Baltimore's institutions and linger in the public consciousness for decades. In the months following Sister Cathy Cesnik's murder, the case lingered in Baltimore's consciousness as a chilling mystery. While investigators pursued leads on strangers who might have targeted her, a more troubling story began to emerge from within the walls of Archbishop Keough High School. Former students whispered about an atmosphere of fear, intimidation, and misconduct that had been carefully hidden from public view. In 1992, over 20 years after Cathy's death, Jean Hargaden Warner, a former student at Keough, came forward under the pseudonym Jane Doe. She revealed experiences of abuse at the hands of the school's guidance counselor and chaplain, Father A. Joseph Maskell. Her testimony was precise and disturbing. She described a pattern of psychological manipulation, coercion, and physical abuse, often disguised as counseling sessions. The victims were young, vulnerable, and bound by trust to the very institution that should have protected them. The link to Sister Cathy became immediately apparent. Jean testified that just days before Cathy's disappearance, she had confided in her about the abuse she endured. Cathy had listened carefully, visibly shaken, and reportedly vowed to act, to intervene on behalf of the students. This detail suggested that Cathy's death may not have been random, but potentially connected to her willingness to expose wrongdoing within the school. For many, this was the first time the murder took on a motive beyond a generic stranger abduction. Following Jean's revelations, a wave of other former students began to come forward, sharing similar experiences with Father Maskell. Patterns emerged. The abuse was systematic, prolonged, and covered up by those in positions of authority. In this climate, Sister Cathy's murder appeared increasingly sinister. Was she silenced because she posed a threat to the secrecy of Keough High School? Investigators could not ignore the possibility that someone within the institution, or closely connected to it, had orchestrated her death. The resurfacing of these allegations reignited interest in the cold case. Police began examining old records, revisiting witness statements, and comparing them with the accounts provided by the survivors. Father Maskell, once a respected figure, became a central focus. His life and actions were scrutinized in unprecedented detail, revealing discrepancies and potential motives that had never been considered in the early stages of the investigation. Meanwhile, the former students, now adults, began organizing themselves, determined that Cathy's story would not be forgotten. They meticulously collected documentation, photographs, and statements to ensure that the connection between the abuse and her murder was recognized. Their efforts would later form the backbone of public awareness campaigns and the eventual creation of the documentary series that would bring national attention to the case. By the mid-1990s, it was clear that Sister Cathy's murder was not an isolated tragedy. It was deeply entwined with the hidden abuses at Keogh High School, the complicity of those in power, and the fear that silencing her might protect a system built on secrecy. The shadows that loomed over the institution were darker than anyone had imagined, and the investigation into her death was only beginning to uncover them. As Sister Cathy Cesnik's murder case resurfaced in the 1990s, law enforcement faced the daunting task of revisiting decades-old evidence. Investigators began systematically reviewing the case files, witness statements, and tips that had accumulated over the years. With the new testimonies from former students about abuse at Archbishop Keogh High School, a fresh lens was applied. Could Cathy's murder be connected to those who wanted to keep the school's secrets hidden? Father A. Joseph Maskell immediately became the focal point of the investigation. Police examined his movements, interactions with students, and personal connections at the time of Cathy's disappearance. They looked into his role as chaplain and counselor, particularly in relation to the accounts provided by Jean Hargaden Wayner and other survivors. Though compelling, these testimonies alone could not produce physical evidence linking Maskell to the crime, and he had passed away in 2001, leaving investigators with only circumstantial leads. Investigators also considered other possible suspects. Father Gerard Koob, the priest whom Cathy was reportedly close to, was questioned regarding his activities on the evening of November 7th, 1969. While his alibi held and he passed a polygraph test, police did not dismiss him entirely, knowing that even minor discrepancies could hold significance in cold cases. Beyond clergy, detectives compiled a list of local individuals who might have had opportunity or motive, though no conclusive connections emerged. The investigation further explored patterns in Baltimore at the time. The late 1960s and early 70s were marked by a troubling series of unsolved attacks and murders targeting young women. Cathy's disappearance occurred just days before the tragic death of 20-year-old Joyce Malecki, who vanished while shopping at a local mall and was found dead shortly after. Investigators examined potential links between the cases, noting similarities in victim profiles, locations, and circumstances, though definitive evidence tying the murders together remained elusive. DNA technology became a vital tool decades later. As forensic science advanced, law enforcement exhumed and analyzed remains and samples from the crime scene. By 2017, Father Maskell's body was exhumed in hopes of identifying DNA that could conclusively link him to Cathy's murder. Modern testing, however, revealed that the DNA from the crime scene did not match Maskell. While this eliminated the possibility of a direct genetic link, it did not resolve the larger question of whether he or someone connected to him orchestrated her death. Throughout this time, the police maintained that the investigation remained active. Analysts created detailed timelines, reconstructed Cathy's movements on November 7th, and assessed the behavior of potential suspects. Every angle was scrutinized, from her last known location near her apartment, to the discovery site in the Lansdowne dump, to the relationships she maintained within both the convent and the local community. The renewed investigation highlighted the complexity of cold cases, especially those entangled with institutional secrecy. While many leads proved inconclusive, the combined pressure from law enforcement and the community of former students ensured that Sister Cathy's story stayed alive. This relentless attention would eventually contribute to public awareness, documentary coverage, and continued efforts to uncover the truth more than 5 decades later. For decades, Sister Cathy Cesnik's murder remained a cold case, known mostly to investigators and the tight circle of her former students. That changed when a small group of women from Archbishop Keogh High School refused to let her story fade. Former students, including Gemma Hoskins and Abby Schaub, began gathering documents, interviewing classmates, and sharing memories of Cathy and the abuses at the school. They became tireless advocates, determined to uncover the truth and keep Cathy's memory alive. Their efforts culminated in the production of the 7-part Netflix documentary series, The Keepers, released in May of 2017. The series detailed the murder, the systemic abuse by Father A. Joseph Maskell, and the students' decades-long quest for justice. Unlike typical true crime documentaries, The Keepers focused as much on the survivors and their pursuit of accountability as on the murder itself. Interviews with Jean Hargaden Weiner, other victims, and former students painted a chilling picture of the environment at Kiev High School and the potential motive behind Cathy's death. The Keepers sparked a nationwide conversation. Viewers were shocked by the systemic failures and by the possibility that Cathy may have been killed to silence her. The series reignited public interest and generated a wave of new tips and leads for investigators. Baltimore County Police officially stated that the case remained active and that new information was being evaluated, highlighting the ongoing efforts to solve a mystery more than 47 years old. Beyond public attention, the series inspired legal and investigative action. In April of 2023, the Maryland Attorney General released an extensive report detailing decades of abuse within the Archdiocese of Baltimore. The report identified more than 150 clergy members accused of abusing over 600 known victims across 80 years. Father Maskell was listed among those with numerous confirmed allegations. While the report did not provide new evidence about Cathy's murder directly, it confirmed the broader environment of secrecy and abuse in which her disappearance occurred. The exposure from the Keepers also had legislative consequences. The Maryland legislature passed the Child Victims Act of 2023, removing the statute of limitations for civil cases related to child abuse. This opened the door for hundreds of survivors to pursue justice and held institutions accountable for decades of neglect. The Archdiocese of Baltimore subsequently filed for bankruptcy, a direct response to mounting claims and public scrutiny. Cathy Cesnik's murder and the abuse revelations became intertwined, creating a lasting legacy. The dedication of former students and advocates ensured that her story would continue to influence public awareness about institutional accountability. While the case remained unsolved, Cathy's memory transformed into a symbol of courage, inspiring investigations, reforms, and a commitment to protecting future generations. With renewed public attention following the Keepers, law enforcement revisited long-standing leads and examined the Cesnik case with modern forensic tools. By 2017, advances in DNA analysis offered hope that technology could finally provide answers that had eluded investigators for nearly 5 decades. Crime scene evidence, long preserved, was carefully re-examined. Items from Cathy's abandoned car and the landfill site where her body was discovered were tested against DNA from various persons of interest. Father Maskell, a central figure in the abuse allegations, was exhumed in 2017. Investigators hoped that any DNA evidence could link him directly to the murder, potentially confirming suspicions that Cathy had been silenced. However, testing revealed that Maskell's DNA did not match evidence recovered from the scene. While this outcome eliminated the possibility of a definitive link, it did not fully exonerate him in the eyes of some investigators and the public. Other individuals connected to Cathy's life at the time, including acquaintances, colleagues, and those associated with Keogh High School, were also evaluated, but no conclusive match emerged. Over the years, investigators compiled DNA profiles of several unidentified contributors from the crime scene. These profiles were entered into national databases, hoping that a match might eventually be made through distant relatives or genealogical research. While no breakthrough had occurred as of early 2026, forensic experts emphasized that these profiles kept the possibility of a future resolution alive. Beyond DNA, detectives revisited the timeline of Cathy's disappearance. Questions about her last known movements, including stops at the bank and shopping center, were analyzed in new ways. Investigators interviewed surviving witnesses and former students, seeking details that might have been overlooked during the initial investigation in 1969. Even small details, like which stores she visited or who she spoke to, were re-examined for inconsistencies or patterns that could point to a perpetrator. Investigators also considered broader criminal patterns in Baltimore during that period. The late 1960s and early 1970s saw a cluster of unsolved murders of young women in the region. While some were later solved through genealogy, others remain unexplained, including cases of Joyce Malecki and Pamela Lynn Conyers. Law enforcement considered the possibility that Cathy's murder could have been part of a larger pattern of violence, though no definitive link was ever established. Throughout this renewed investigation, authorities stressed the importance of public tips. Calls, letters, and online submissions were carefully logged and evaluated. Every new lead, no matter how small, was seen as a potential key to unlocking a case that had remained cold for almost 57 years. The Cesnik investigation became a testament to the persistence of law enforcement, the power of modern forensic science, and the hope that even decades-old crimes could eventually be solved. While the renewed investigation focused on DNA and forensic re-examination, the Cesnik case also drew attention for its complex web of possible theories. Investigators, journalists, and survivors all explored scenarios beyond the central focus on Father Maskell. Some considered the possibility that Cathy's murder, while tied to the abuse at Keough High School, might have involved accomplices, individuals who helped conceal evidence or assisted in the crime. These accomplices could have been former students, staff members, or even individuals outside the school entirely, but no definitive connections were ever proven. Another line of inquiry involved Cathy's personal life. Her rumored relationship with Father Gerard Koob, though verified as platonic or romantic depending on differing accounts, was scrutinized. Investigators considered whether her private relationships could have indirectly placed her in danger. Koob himself consistently maintained his innocence and passed polygraph tests. Yet the attention he received highlights the broader challenge of untangling personal associations from motive. In addition, the murder was examined alongside broader patterns of violent crime in Baltimore during the late 1960s and early 1970s. Cathy's death occurred shortly before other high-profile cases, including the disappearance and murder of Joyce Malecki in December 1969. While law enforcement never confirmed a connection, the proximity and timing and location fueled speculation about whether a serial predator could have been active in the area. Similarities in method, unexpected abductions, and bodies discovered in isolated areas kept this line of inquiry alive for decades. The impact of time itself became a complicating factor. Witness memories faded, documents were misplaced, and potential evidence deteriorated. Some leads depended entirely on recollections from survivors, former students, and neighbors, meaning the case relied heavily on personal testimony. Yet these testimonies provided invaluable context, painting a picture of the school environment, the climate of fear, and the sense of threat that existed even before Cathy disappeared. Journalists and authors also contributed to the investigation indirectly. By gathering stories, conducting interviews, and publishing accounts, they kept public attention on the case and encouraged new tips. The Netflix documentary series The Keepers amplified this effect, reminding Baltimore and the world that the murder of Sister Cathy was not just a historical footnote, but an active mystery with unanswered questions. Despite decades of investigation, some questions remain hauntingly open. Was Cathy killed solely because she knew about Maskell's abuse? Were others involved? And if so, who? Could there have been a broader network covering up the crime? As of early 2026, No suspect has been charged with her murder, and the full story remains buried within the intersecting layers of personal betrayal, institutional failure, and unresolved criminal investigation. Even without answers, the Cesnik case continues to serve as a reminder of the courage required to speak out and the persistence necessary to seek justice. It challenges investigators, journalists, and the public to keep asking questions and to never accept silence as closure. More than 55 years have passed since Sister Cathy Cesnik vanished from her apartment in Baltimore, yet her story continues to resonate. While the details of her murder remain unsolved, the broader impact of the case has been profound, touching not only her immediate community, but also sparking national conversations about institutional accountability. Cathy's students, women like Gemma Hoskins, Abby Schaub, and Jean Weiner, transformed grief into action, tirelessly advocating for truth and justice. Their dedication not only kept Cathy's memory alive, but also helped bring attention to decades of abuse that might otherwise have remained hidden. The Netflix series The Keepers, released in 2017, played a pivotal role in this legacy. By combining survivor testimonies, archival footage, and investigative reporting, it introduced Cathy's story to a global audience. The series did more than recount a murder, it contextualized it within a culture of silence and institutional neglect, showing the courage required to confront powerful organizations. It sparked renewed interest from law enforcement, journalists, and amateur investigators alike, generating hundreds of tips and leads that continue to be examined today. In April of 2023, the Maryland Attorney General released a comprehensive report detailing decades of abuse within the Archdiocese of Baltimore. The findings were staggering. Over 150 clergy were credibly accused of abusing more than 600 victims over nearly 80 years. Father Joseph Maskell, central to the Cesnik case, was identified as having abused at least 39 women. While Cathy's murder remains unsolved, the report confirmed the reality of the environment she had confronted, one where speaking out could carry real danger. Legislation followed in response to this growing awareness. The Child Victims Act of 2023 removed the statute of limitations for civil claims of child abuse, allowing survivors who were previously silenced to seek justice. Hundreds of victims filed claims, forcing institutions to face decades of misconduct. The Archdiocese of Baltimore, facing overwhelming financial and legal pressure, filed for bankruptcy, an acknowledgement of the systemic failures revealed by these investigations. Cathy's case, while unresolved in a criminal sense, became part of a much larger movement toward accountability and reform. For investigators, the search for Cathy's killer continues. Advances in DNA technology and forensic genealogy offer new hope, particularly following the exhumation of Joyce Malecki in late 2023. Authorities hope that modern testing may reveal connections previously undetectable, whether to the Cesnik case or to other unsolved murders in Baltimore from the same era. Each new development reminds the public the cold cases are not permanently frozen. Justice remains possible, even after decades. Ultimately, the legacy of Sister Cathy Cesnik is one of courage, memory, and relentless pursuit of truth. She was a young woman who sought to protect the vulnerable and challenge wrongdoing, and her students carried that torch forward, amplifying her voice across generations. Her story reminds us that crimes are never just statistics. They are deeply human, with ripple effects that can awaken awareness, reform institutions, and inspire change. As we close this chapter on Cathy's story, the questions linger. Who killed Sister Cathy Cesnik? Was it an attempt to silence her from exposing abuse, or was it part of a larger pattern of violence in Baltimore at the time? And perhaps most importantly, how many more voices must rise before the full truth is finally revealed? While the answers remain unknown, her story continues to illuminate the importance of courage, persistence, and accountability, ensuring that Cathy's memory and her quest for justice will never be forgotten.